Hey, everybody. So this book has gone to print. I'm told that it went to print a couple of days ago in Trudeau's kitchen. Um, why should you buy and devour this book? Not because I need to make a ton of money from it, but because after what I've been through for 5 years, if you just go on my business page on Facebook, facebook.com/soul shaping, take a look at how many shares my substantive posts get now. So it used to average somewhere around 500 to 1,000. And that was about 3 years ago before the shadow ban really kicked in. Some of them only share 1 to 4 times, which means they're not getting exposed to a following there of, I think now 522,000. It was 543. It didn't go down because people don't like my work. It went down because the ban is such that it doesn't reach enough people to get the shares that bring new people to the page. There's always like a natural, number of people that sort of fall away from a page or lose interest. But the pages continue to grow because if they're not shadow banned, they're getting shared more than enough. New people are coming to the page, and the page keeps going up. Um, so why would they do this? Why would so many things? The whole book is about all these endless obstructions, endless threats, endless efforts to get me to not tell this specific story. Not just about leaving and disconnecting from Sophie Trudeau and all that sort of early stuff in the book, but every effort made thereafter, probably millions of dollars spent in order to stop me from continuing to have this voice and to ultimately bring this book to the world. And the reason I believe is because I believe this book is beschert. What I mean is that this book was intended, and not intended specifically for me. Nobody suffered more in the bringing this through than I have. But because some universal force we could call God or creation or something is aware that we are not shifting. We are not moving in the hoped direction as a species. And my belief is that's because abuse of power, which is mostly in existence because of what I call empty ego syndrome, continues to rule the roost. And every step forward that we make on a grassroots level gets clawed back on some other level by these power brokers and the techno terrorists, flying monkeys and miscreants that support and enable them to continue to keep us from growing forward as a humanity. So you'd say, well, Jeff, so there's a lot of books out there about abuse of power and Kennedy and all this and Nixon and all these things. And what's the difference? I think what the difference is, there's a reason that the media ran away from this book, and that's part of the story, particularly Canadian media, but not only Canadian media. This book is so real. It's like one of those things that when you see it, you can't unsee it. It changes you. Those books, in many ways, were about sort of people who were power brokers, connecting with other power brokers, using some characters, real people, and then ultimately getting caught. And so it sort of affirmed our belief that there's a lot of bullshit with people in positions of power. This book is different because this is them coming after a civilian. Jody Wilson-Raybould in Canada went through a lot with the Liberal administration under Trudeau and ultimately lost her job as a result of it, or left her job rightfully as a result of it. But she was protected in the system. I'm the most unprotected person, completely vulnerable, walking around unshaven in my hat. They could shoot me anytime they want. They've had 3 attempts with vehicles to harass me, 1 attempt to knock me off a bridge in Grand Island in New York not that long ago. This is a story about really how it goes piece by piece, moment to moment, when the globalists all band together. So it moves from the theory of, oh, the globalists are banding together, right? It moves from the theory of, they're all in on it. Well, they are all in on it, actually. But I never really exactly understood in a very particular way what that means. And I think, and that's probably because the people who went through what I've gone through are either dead or they're in insane asylums because they try to drive you mad they either try to prove that you're bad, so your story is not credible, or drive you mad so that your story is not credible, or make sure that you die. I mean, they probably get bonuses. These miscreants that work for these they're political operatives that make crazy amounts of money to destroy people. So basically, the whole thing requires somebody to survive it enough and who has the ability to actually put the words down. No, it's not like if I can survive to write the next book, it would probably be much more poetic, and mellifluous. And this is really more just telling you, like data, like really telling you what happened, trying to tell you a little bit about my feelings, but my feelings don't change much because I'm in a survivalist, traumatized, hypervigilant PTSD or OTSD, ongoing trauma stress disorder, because it hasn't ended, state, but I can find the words. And so now we have a book that you can look at and go, oh my God, this is really how this fucking thing goes. Like all of these organizations that come along and connect with me and then try to do things to obstruct the book, and they're not even being themselves. So there's some dark force uniting to keep this book from you. And now that it's done and I can sit back and read the book, I understand why. Because if you read it, you'll understand, really get how they do this. And until we really understand how they do this, we can't change it. And I think that's why it hasn't changed. I look back and I think that, there was something about the story of Jesus, which is really the great whistleblower, at least one of the great whistleblowers of all time. There was why did that story capture us so much and inform behavior and cause compel the codification of a religion? Quite apart from how you feel about religion, it has helped a great many people. And it's because the story was so human, personal. Just a human being who, saw that we could do better, expressed it, and then they wanted to kill him, and they did. And we don't get that many stories like that because nobody reaches that point, the point where it happens like that. Usually they get disparaged, defamed, discredited, or destroyed, as they have certainly attempted to do with me. And in between, there's probably been tens of thousands of individuals who have endeavored to be whistleblowers, but for one reason or another didn't make it through to tell you the really precise story. So in Trudeau's kitchen, forget whether it's about Trudeau, or you're liberal, you're a conservative, it doesn't matter. What this story is about is how they destroy people who want to tell the truth about how these games are played and how we are being controlled, contained, and destroyed by a bunch of people, almost all of them with nothing other than empty ego syndrome. They need power either because it makes them feel better about themselves, maybe makes them feel safer in the world because of whatever they grew up with, or they have some strange and interesting predilections that they know there's no better way to hide than if they have power and a bunch of minions around them that will protect them. Whatever it is, it has to stop, because the hunger, the deep hunger of the empty ego is what's compelling these people to do anything to sustain power. They don't want to go back to those empty ego feelings. So they'll destroy anything and anybody and convince themselves that they have a real rational, good ideological reason for it, which is nonsense. We need to understand what's going on the inside. How is it that Jeff Brown disconnects from Sophie Trudeau, and then somebody's on his phone? Who puts that person on the phone? How does Meta get involved? Who connects to Meta? How does the bank get involved? How does PayPal maybe get involved? How does Amazon get involved? Blocking his book, Human Manifestations, blocking his next book, Where is God in All of This? How do companies that produce books and products get involved? They may not even know within themselves how it is that they decided to stand against and try to cut deals and obstruct this book. There's something going on here that is far beyond me. I know with absolute certainty, because I'm not enjoying 1 second of it, that I'm being utilized for some purpose. I want to believe, and I do believe it's benevolent. And I believe it's because this story, if you read this story, you will not be able to turn away from an understanding of why it is that we are not making real progress. I know we say we are. We list off all the reasons we are, but then in other ways we aren't, because now they have technology and they have more control than they had before. So you've done all this sort of evolutionary work around your healing and your trauma, and now they have way more power as the puppeteer. So we're not getting anywhere because we're not really seeing the problem clearly enough that we can't turn away from it. Please read my book. And you know what? If you could, get it to those Gen Z kids, because they're going to know what this book is. They're the ones that helped in Nepal. They lost, I think, 72 lives. I'm so sorry about that. In order to make that part of the world a better place, please, if you don't want to read it, get it for your kid, because they were going to read this book. And for whatever reason, and maybe they are the indication of the ways in which we have progressed, they know what this thing is. When I'm here, I'm in near Washington, D.C., and when I talk to them sometimes, they get it so quickly. They don't have the defenses. They're not in the Canadian bubble of like believing everything's perfect and there's no way those people would do those things. They don't have any of that. They understand this is how this goes. And sadly, it is how it goes. Anyway, thanks for listening. It's been quite a journey.